So, welcome everybody to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. Today is Thursday, August the 8th, 2024. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581 and press 1, and that puts you in queue to talk to us. And we would love to hear your comments and your questions because that makes this your show. And we'll give Michael just a moment to dial in and getting back into the chat room. Blog Talk has a little bit of, I don't know what you'd call it, that you have to only have one host in at a time and one host in the chat room at a time. So we have to give just a moment from the time that Dr. Tim hangs up to the time Michael can dial in, and then I have to reboot to get into the chat room. So it's just a little bit of technical issue there. And we'll give Michael just another moment. And we do have a hand up, but I'll wait till Michael gets on. So we do have several more episodes, radio shows added to the YouTube. So, go over to whyagain.org, and up at the top on the little YouTube icon, it'll take you to our YouTube channel. And there's over 600 videos out there now. And of course, some of them, like the radio shows we've put out there, they just have a picture along with the audio. But to be on YouTube, it has to be an MP4. So it has to have some kind of a picture with it. And what we've been doing with those who are converting for us, 2011 is complete and started on 2012, and then I have another person that's starting with 2023 and going backwards, so they'll meet in the middle somewhere. And so all of those are on YouTube that you can link back in and enjoy those. And Michael's with us now, so I'm going to say welcome, Michael, and we do have a hand up already.
Awesome. Thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody, and deep, deep gratitude to the two folks that are doing the conversion of our radio shows. It just makes the work that much more available. And of course, our commitment is to take this to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. And I just put out the thought that, we don't get paid to do this radio show. We actually pay to do it every month. So if this is supporting you, if this is benefiting you, I invite you to consider, from wherever you are in terms of your own financial resources and the level of support you get from this work, to consider doing some sort of support, whether maybe it's kick in and do a project like that, or, there are 1,000 things that always need to be done with this work, or if you just go to our website at the bottom of the page, at the bottom of whyagain.org, there is a little donate button. And if you want to kick something into the kitty, that would be helpful. I'm not sure, we don't need to get into it, but we just had to do another upgrade on our app, and of course, not being on the road anymore has put a hole in our cash flow. So if this is benefiting you, I invite you to just consider jumping on. And it doesn't matter if it's $1 or, if it's $1 million. If we had $1 million, we would begin spending it today in a project that would take this whole work of forgiveness to such a quantum leap on the planet. And basically what we do every month is we just look at what resources do we have, and just invested in, or looking at investing in some new software to be able to do some more video type work. So anyway, if you want to support it, please do. And other than that, let's say hello to our caller.
Okay. I don't have this number in my contacts, so I'm not sure who it is. Area code 267. You're on the air. Who do we have?
Yeah, hi. My name is Ray Silverman. I am calling from the Philadelphia area.
Welcome. Ray, was it?
Yeah, Ray. Ray Silverman.
Okay. Good to meet you, Ray. Welcome. How can we support you?
Thank you. I want to take you back about 30 years ago to a fellow named Dan McDougald, a lawyer who loved your work. Oh, does that ring a bell for you?
I raised my eyes about a half an inch above my phone, and I'm looking at Dan McDougald's picture on my wall here. Yes. He was a very dear friend and a partner in business, and we worked together for many years. Awesome Most amazing mind and most amazing gentleman.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So how do you know Dan? What do you know about Dan? How do you tie into all of this?
Well, at the time, I was a minister in Atlanta, Georgia, and he came to visit me one day out of the blue because he knew that I had a Swedenborgian connection. I was a minister of a church that's based on a spiritual understanding of the Word of God. And he was showing me amazing connections between your work and what Swedenborg was saying. So at the moment, I'm laid up. I just had hip replacement, and I just been scrolling through, and I came across Michael Ryce again, and your fabulous work. I also remember you had some kind of a connection to the Celestine prophecy too.
Yes, actually, Jim Redfield was a student of mine as he wrote Celestine Prophecy, and we were actually the first ones to put his, when he first wrote the book, he self-published it, and the day that the publisher gave him the first delivery of books, we were speaking at Unity in Pensacola, Florida, and Jim showed up with a couple of boxes of books in the back, the trunk of his car, and we sold some of the first copies and put it out to our mailing list across the country, and that's when Warner Books noticed it when sales started to happen all over the country, and he ended up with the second best-selling book in the world in 1995. So, it was pretty cool to be part of that project.
Isn't that amazing to know that he got his start from you? Just amazing.
Well, he didn't get his start from me. He was a psychologist and had his own thing, but we definitely had a connection, and we were definitely delighted to support him. I actually ended up being in the movie Celestine Prophecy. I was on the set while it was being shot. However, my footage got left on the cutting room floor, so I didn't make the final cut.
And Michael, didn't he write the foreword in your book?
Yes, he wrote the foreword to Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've for years and years, I've loved that concept of why is this happening to me again? And I was just listening to one of your other shows where someone was reading your material and discussing a specific example of a fellow who wanted his boss's approval, and his boss was very critical of him. And it took him back to when he was 8 years old, and his dad was critical of him as well. And he was applying your principles of replace a self-serving goal with a loving goal. And so he replaced this idea of trying to get his boss to love him with the goal of, how can I really listen and understand my boss? That's a goal you can be in control of. You can't control, what your boss will do. I thought, so anyway, I just heard that today, and I told my wife, this stuff is phenomenal. This is really, really good stuff. And basically, I just wanted to call and tell you that. And I also was wondering if you've done anything with Swedenborg's work, especially his idea of spiritual influences.
No, I haven't. However, and that was going to be my next question, I would love to see what you have that shows parallels, because I'm sure, I'm aware of who Swedenborg was, and I'm sure there are probably refinements and things I could learn from that connection, where the parallels are. And so if you would be kind enough to send me some information, and what I'll do when the show is over, Jeannie's got your number. I assume you'll get texts on this phone?
Yeah, that would be wonderful. If you would just send me a text.
I'll text you my email address.
Fantastic. Just fantastic. So nice to chat with you today. I really appreciate it.
Let me throw in another piece of the puzzle from what you just shared about replacing a goal that you can't control with the goal that you can, because you're really at the crux of the first century Aramaic forgiveness process. So there is an and I don't know who it was you were listening to who was reading my work and presented that idea, but actually there's an interim step that is really the core of the resolution of the Why Is This Happening to Me Again process, and that is not the replacement of a goal, but actually the canceling of a goal. And that recognizing that it is our goals that drive perception. And when I'm pained and my mind is telling me, of course, that I'm pained about what somebody else is doing, not what I'm doing, because, of course, I'm an innocent victim. It is my goal that actually recruits the pained part of my own mind into activity, and then has me projecting that part of my mind into my brain's image of this other person so that I can pretend that they're the problem in my life. So before we come up with a new goal, a goal that, as you offer, I can control, before we do that, the word in Aramaic, forgive, is shabag or shabak, and it literally means to cancel. And when I cancel that goal, literally the construct created by what in the scriptures was referred to as the mind of man, the projection that this is about somebody else, that construct collapses, and it causes that construct of my mind to drop into its own footprint, and that gives me access to my own unconscious, or in the scriptural sense, the desert in me, or the hidden part of my own mind, which was also in the scriptures called the heart. You know, you hear Yeshua saying, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. He doesn't say take care of the other guy. And the way that you take care of your own heart, your own unconscious, is to be able to drop into it. And he is the only genius that I have ever seen in all of the 50 years I've been doing this work and developing this work, who had the key to that whole process, and that is the perceptual construct in your mind is being driven by your goals. Locate the exact and specific goal that you've got, cancel it, and you get to start to look at your own unconscious. You get to go into your own heart and start to clean out the generational patterns. Now, that story of the Jews wandering in the desert for 40 years, clearly it's a silly idea to think that a bright group of people who understand astronomy could possibly get lost in a 35 square mile hot sandy place for 40 years. That they were talking about people who spend about the first 40 years of their lives unconscious, functioning out of the unconscious dynamics. And you remember that to get out of the desert, what had happened, the old generation had to die off. That didn't mean everybody in old physical bodies had to die. It meant that the old causes, the root of the word generation is genari, or cause, the old causes in the mind had to be removed, and that's done through forgiveness. And the core of the forgiveness process is locating the goal that's driving my pain perception, canceling it, and getting to look at when that drops into its own footprint, get to look at my own unconscious dynamics. And when I expose that to love and invite what in our modern language we might call the super processor, Ruka Dekucha, or the Greeks translate as the Holy Spirit, then I get to process through my own unconscious dynamics, which are usually based in generational patterns, the quote-unquote sins of the fathers.
Mm-hmm.
So just another piece of the puzzle, and I don't know if we have the world's only forgiveness app out there, so people can actually pick up and do the forgiveness process right there on the app.
Yeah, can I just share with you what came to mind while you were saying that?
Please, yes.
Well, first of all, when you talk about the wilderness, I'm thinking about the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord. And it's John the Baptist, announcing that truth is coming. And, and you say the process begins with loving truth. I thought that was so great that you did that. And the other thing that came to mind was when Jesus said, forgive us our debts. You're exactly 100% on. This is about canceling debts, and it's our debts. The whole process is within. I love that. And just a third thing, this goes back to Dan McDougald. I wrote a book with my wife in 2000, and I was talking about loving your neighbor. And there was something that Dan McDougald taught me from the Aramaic scriptures, and we put it in the book. It was about loving your neighbor meant whoever you're thinking about at the moment, is your neighbor. And I thought that was the most fabulous thing I had ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah, his discovery that the word neighbor is a mental word, not a physical word. Anybody mentally near to you is your neighbor. And actually, we've kind of refined that since then, as opposed to, and if you go to the Aramaic, you never find Jesus saying, love your neighbor. In Aramaic, what he says is have rachma for your neighbor. And the word rachma in Aramaic represents a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that allows only intentions keyed to love to be used by the mind in forming your goals. And so by having rachma set in relationship to this neighbor, and that is anybody I think about, including myself, anybody in history, if I think about, Hitler, he's my neighbor. And the idea was that by maintaining rachma, which has two functions, one is it's a gateway for love, human life, the created essence that we are, to enter our human forms. So it's a way to maintain my human life. And two, it keeps my mind on track with love, which could otherwise get off track and get lost in hostility or fear. Now, in interacting with, what the world might consider to be the most destructive person in the world, I get to maintain my human life if I honor truth, and I maintain this filter in the frontal lobes of my brain, maintain rachma, and can embrace this neighbor in love, which might be the very thing that brings healing to the person that I'd really like to destroy if I step into my hostility or fear-based mind.
Yeah.
And I would love to see a copy of your book.
Yeah, wow. I wasn't trying to plug my book by any means. I was just, my goal was to express my admiration for what you guys are doing, and to encourage you, to let you know folks are out there like me who are learning, and so grateful. So thank you so much, Michael, and you too, Jeannie, for what you're doing as well.
Well, honored and delighted, and as I say, I'll get your phone number from Jeannie, and I'll drop you a note, and maybe we can just, my book is out of print these days, but I do have some used copies. I'll be glad to sign one and put it in the mail to you. Maybe we can just exchange books. I'd love to have a look at what you've written.
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much, Michael. God bless, and have a great rest of your show.
All right, blessings. Take care. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, bye-bye. Sure.
Well, that's really sweet to be reminded of Dan. I actually have a picture right here in front of me of Dan that I regularly invite his support, his assistance, though he left his body, I'm not even sure now, 15 years ago, that he continued to support us and teach us in this work. He was a giant of a man. Interesting, and he was in the U.S. Navy, and when the Navy did IQ tests on everybody in the Navy, he came up with the number 3 IQ of every member of the Navy, and he was an attorney, and he turned his back on fame and fortune, on money, in order to bring forgiveness, in order to bring the actual first century Aramaic idea of forgiveness into the prison systems in Atlanta and in Albany, Georgia. And that was something that was done hand in hand with a judge who, through Dan, became one of my mentors. He was a Superior Court judge in Albany, Georgia, Asa D. Kelly. Closest thing to a saint that I've seen. And I've sat and watched him as he's contemplated or gone through the fact that he's going to set somebody up for life in prison for something that they've done. And yet, because he understood this idea of rachma, maintaining love, he never punished one person. Albany, Georgia is a pretty tough town. It's been referred to as a body part lower than the armpit of Georgia. And some pretty heinous crimes. And when Judge Kelly would sentence someone, his sentencing would go along the lines of, love you like a brother, but you're not safe in the community, and the community has taken up a collection. I mean, he used to actually say this to people, has taken up a collection to build a building with bars around it and ask me to determine who's safe in the community and who isn't. And I'm here to take care of my community, and you're not safe in my community, so I'm going to send you to prison. And if you like to heal, I'll send you to Laws of Living. And the Laws of Living course actually came out of a request from Judge Kelly. And Dan had created a course in relationship or in connection with Judge Kelly called Emotional Maturity Instruction. I, at the same time, before Dan and I had ever met, was doing a thing called Lessons in Living. We'd actually created a school system in Florida, a program called Lessons in Living, and using the principles of healing from the naturopathic perspective. Dan and I met and found we'd been traveling parallel paths. I'd been working with the Aramaic as a naturopathic physician, and he as a lawyer. And we co-assembled. We put together our work over a period of years. He used to come to Heartland every summer and do a Laws of Living intensive with me. Many of you on the show have had the opportunity to sit with Dan at Heartland. And I would spend a lot of time at the Judicial Service Agency in Albany, Georgia, working with him. And it's just quite an awesome experience. So many accolades and appreciation. And thanks for bringing Dan up today and just honoring him and honoring his contribution to the world, to this work, and standing in the space of love for him as he moves on in his eternal life, and I'm sure continues to feed us information and guide us from the other side. So thanks for resonating those brain cells. It opens joy and delight in me. So, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody else in the phone queue or anything happening in the chat room?
Susan has her hand up, 610, you're on the air.
Hey, folks, I just got on, and I heard you talking about Dan, and I wonder if that's somebody who I know who just died?
No, Dan McDougald, you heard me talk about him before.
Oh,
the
yeah.
gentleman that called in had known Dan in Atlanta back a couple of decades ago, and so he had called in to just acknowledge Dan and acknowledge the work we were doing. And Dan, I guess, had shared with him some of my work back in the early days when Dan and I first connected. And so he just had a hip replacement and had the time to be tapping into the show and was, I guess, laid up nursing his hip, which we definitely extend love in the direction of healing that hip up quickly and having it work well. So he was just acknowledging Dan and so I just kind of introducing everybody who perhaps hasn't been on the show over the years to who Dan was.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I did have a question embedded in a report. Michael was delivered by my son and two grandsons. They helped him move in to the 18th floor of a beautiful high-rise in Jacksonville. Michael freaked out because he can't do heights. He's afraid to look out his window. And they hadn't told him it was the 18th floor. And I'm sort of glad they hadn't, because he would have refused to go. But they saw the women who worked with him said, well, we've had this amazing thing happen. This woman on the 4th floor just moved out. She's got a different situation. And we could move you down there. And so I've had to call on my grandsons, and I'm paying them to move him again from the 18th floor to the 4th floor. But my son is very angry with me. He said, Michael, my son spent a whole 2 days with him in the truck, and this is what my question.
Right.
His take
and of course, your son
Michael,
isn't angry with you, but his anger's up.
Yeah, his anger's up. He says I'm an enabler. I've allowed myself to be endlessly manipulated by Michael. And Michael is a great taker. He'll take whatever he can get, and he's crying and shaking and having panic. And of course, these women who were working with him are very concerned and trying to set him up in a way that's comfortable for him. And so I independently, my son is flying back, so and I knew he wouldn't want to work with Michael for another day, but I've hired my grandboys. My son says I have no boundaries, and my son's mad, and that's okay. He's been mad at me before, but
and he'll be mad again.
Know, yeah, all right. I've lived with Michael for 2 years, and I don't know whether it's mental illness or manipulativeness.
Right.
And so I don't concern myself with that question. If he's got to do what he's doing, then he's doing it. And I've sort of just been an observer, which I've learned from you and Dr. Tim. Just be curious, just observe.
Right.
But his take, and also Michael has told us that he's going to look for a place in St. Augustine. He doesn't want to be in Jacksonville. And I say to Michael, whatever you want to do for yourself from now on, good luck. I mean, I have to hand it to you. You're going to do that. So he's going to do that. But my son says I shouldn't have offered to help. I should make Michael pay for the work that the boys are going to be doing. They did it for free yesterday. And I'm not arguing with him. I'm just watching the difference in what is going on. And he doesn't want anything more to do with Michael, and I don't really want any more to do with Michael either. You know, yesterday I was sort of snowed by Celinda's being so moved that we're a family, but the fact is we aren't. We aren't a family. We helped him as best we could, but there was no lasting connection that I could feel, and I don't understand that either, or why that was that way. I wish him well. And he didn't call me, Michael didn't call me or my son or the boys with all of this hurt and fear. He talked to the women, and the women called us. So Michael knows in a way that he shouldn't ask for anything more. I think he knows. Anyway, that's sort of a shotgun blurting out of what's going on, and I'm just curious about your take.
Well, my take would be I first would acknowledge you for simply functioning like a human being and carrying out the law that was given by Yeshua. That and you know, it relates to the conversation I was just having with the gentleman who called in. The law that says honor or maintain this condition of rachma in your mind so that you function as love toward anyone that you think about. And I think what you are is an exemplary, powerful example of doing that and processing yourself for what comes up when you're doing it, and your own carbon-based memory is fighting with you and giving you the opportunities to learn forgiveness, and setting your boundaries. And, you know, I know that we went back and forth quite a bit because your boundaries were sort of pushed and violated perhaps, but setting them and maintaining a true human attitude of abundance and generosity. I think it's a powerful example. And, you know, I can't be intimate family with everybody that I meet. I mean, over the years, I've worked with thousands of people, and I think of any of them, and it opens a space of cherishing them and caring for them, but I don't have any more of a family relationship with every person that I've worked with over the years because I couldn't possibly, and I don't think any of us could. But Yeshua does lay out a way to maintain your human life and even enhance your human life by maintaining rachma and doing the work that it takes to be the presence of love with anyone and everyone that you contact. And of course, many of those people are going to give us opportunities to learn forgiveness. And in some cases, we'll want to blame them. In other cases, we'll grow up and go, oh, I have some forgiveness to learn. And so I acknowledge you with your son turning the tables on you with the hostility that it brings up with him in dealing with Michael. I honor you for just being able to step back and not have to buy in and just be the space. I mean, that's one of the nicest gifts you could give to your son at this point, I think.
Oh, thanks. Well, that's good. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, he'll cool down.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. You know, I can think of times in the past where a conversation would have been, and then my son did this, and now I'm, and it would have been your stuff. And how many times have I said, well, okay, so now we're back to you. And notice that you're just able to observe what he's doing, and you're in a place of connected love with him. I think that's the fruit of your work. You know, you've been working on that since the day we met you, and certainly long before that. And you're getting to enjoy the fruit of it. And I think it's awesome that you're sharing this on the show, because everyone else who's listening who hasn't reached that yet with some of the challenges in their lives gets to look at and go, oh, that's what I can do. My son could be angry with me and blaming of me and accusing of me, and I can go, oh, that's interesting, rather than get lost in it, because, of course, I don't ever get lost in it. I get lost in the realities that are resonated in me, and, you know, I think you're just giving us a powerful example of how much work you've done. Pretty awesome.
Which leads me to another question. I am, you know, kind of sharing the tools as best I can with my grandson, Charlie, here. And he, this morning, he told me that he had gone with a friend to a movie that triggered him terribly. And I know, Michael, you're into triggering movies.
Yes, we do a few of them.
I said, what triggered you? And he said, well, it was a very, very angry father. And my father was very angry with me to the point where I was terrified of him. And my father hurt me, says Charlie. My father has hurt me, and I want him to know it. And I said, well, I think he does know it. I think he blames himself. And he said, well, he hasn't really owned it to me. He gets mad at me when I confront him. And I said, well, what do you want?
You might let Charlie know. You might remind Charlie or let Charlie know that mad is simply a drug that somebody uses to cover their own pain.
Yeah, good.
If he understands that, he may be able to stand in the space of recognizing, oh, here I am hurt, and I want to be mad, and Dad's mad, and Dad's in his pain. Oh, maybe the pain Dad's got is the same as the pain I've got, and maybe we can together work through this.
That would be so great. I suggested they both come onto the show. Jonathan, I doubt, would do that. I'm not even sure Charlie would, or do individual work on the show. Or Dr. Tim has offered to see Jonathan, you know, in a one-on-one Zoom session or something like that. Jonathan hasn't taken advantage. He's in another kind of therapy, and he also thinks of what I do as kind of woo-woo, you know. So I have to be careful how I translate my stuff to them. But Charlie, I said, well, what would you get out of it if your dad really, really admitted that he hurt you? And he said, it would be justice. And I said, well, then what? What? And he couldn't go any further. He said, I got to go now. But I said, are you going to have fun? And he says, no, I can't. He was going on a field trip with a friend. And he said, I can't have fun. Why not? Because this is bothering me so much. Everything outside of him is causing his pain, in other words.
Right.
And he's not able or willing to let it go at this point. I'm not going to have fun because I'm thinking about this, he says.
Right.
Sure, you're making a prediction there. Okay.
Right.
Anyway.
And you might remind him or offer him what I've noticed. You might share this if it feels appropriate, is that when most people say justice, what they really mean is vengeance.
Okay.
And there's probably a part of him that wants to get even for being hurt. And when he confronts that part and heals that part, then he'll more be able to be a space of compassion for his own unresolved issues, as well as a space of love for the unresolved issues of his father. You know, fathers and sons have been doing this stuff on planet Earth for a long, long time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, too long.
What a life.
And one of the, you know, while you talk about how your son thinks what you're doing is woo-woo, I'd make a suggestion. Maybe he's familiar with what your past diagnosis has been that led to taking the antidepressants and such that you used to take.
Yeah.
And if he checks with people in his profession, you'll find that most will say, well, you're pretty much going to be on that for life. And you might invite him to notice that you're free of it. This is not woo-woo. This works.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, that might appeal to, you know, well, he's got blocks up and protections up. That might appeal to his medical mind to go, oh, yeah, if I talk to John Q. psychiatrist and somebody's on this kind of medication, they're probably on it for life. And, there's no real coming off of that stuff. And just being able to put that forward might assist his personality mind, allow his personality mind to be confronted by his medical mind and open the space for, maybe there is something I need to be looking at here. Maybe.
Yeah. Right.
But it sounds like the drive for him down to Florida was a generous action, and one that is probably going to continue to give him opportunities to learn forgiveness for some time. So we'll certainly hold the space for that. And for him to recognize that this anesthetic he uses, it might be time to put it away.
Right. Well, Lukey is now sober, and he spent all afternoon and took the boys out to dinner last night as a thank you for helping with the move-in and everything. And Luke is sober, and Jonathan wants to be. Jonathan doesn't consider himself an alcoholic per se, but he says, I am using it to take the edge off my anxiety. And I know I'm using it, and when I do, I'm good for nothing for the rest of the night. And I don't feel that good the next day. And he doesn't drink much either. Maybe it's usually one shot of bourbon or two, which sounds to me like it put a person right under the table. But he knows that's not good, and he wants to stop. He hasn't stopped yet, though. He's sort of saying, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, so.
Well, maybe you could suggest that he invite Luke to be his sponsor. That might be an interesting confront for his mind.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. That's a thought. I wonder how that would sit with him. Luke.
Luke's done it successfully, and he's in the family pattern. Luke would probably be a perfect sponsor for him.
Might be. Luke has transferred his addiction to a girlfriend who is just like his father. I've told you that. A power person, charming, bright, beautiful, bulimic, and raging. She turns on him, and he feels he deserves it. So he's got a ways to go.
That's the next layer of power person dynamic that that Luke is going to need to work on.
Yeah.
And it's a family pattern, right?
It sure is. Well, through theirs, particularly, my mother had a raging thing, I chose to introduce my daughter to a raging man who wasn't raging at all. But isn't it amazing how you can deeply intuit somebody's weakness without even seeing it? Bright, handsome, loving boyfriend she had. I thought he's the coolest guy. He was in my church. Introduce them, they fall in love, they marry, and he starts, even before they were married, he started mistreating her. Oy.
Perfect matching bags of garbage.
I know, and you get it without having any conscious knowledge that you're doing that. It just happens. You're attracted to that kind of person.
Well, this is a good place to plug in that insight from Carl Jung. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate.
Exactly, that's true.
I mean, I would love to have been able to spend some time in the energy field of Carl Jung with the type of insight that he had, just to have been physiologically in his field, in the influence of his insight would be pretty awesome.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah, no kidding.
But anyway, that might be an interesting way to confront Jonathan, and perhaps noticing the anger that's up, informing him that he might want to start to think about anger in the same way as he thinks about alcohol, that it's an anesthetic against pain, that it isn't an emotion, and that he might want to start to consider doing with anger the same thing as he's considering doing with alcohol, and that is getting rid of it.
Right. That's a wonderful...
It's the second most common drug in our culture, anger. And, you know, he just quit cold turkey, the most common drug in the culture. When he decided to quit his job, he quit the drug of busyness. And I suspect since he did that, he's gotten to start to look at all kinds of things, since that drug is not available to him. And so putting anger in the same category as alcohol might assist him in moving forward in his process.
And he does...
He's lucky he's got an awesome mentor right there with you.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I get flack from my daughter. She says, Mom, you've got to mind your own business and stay in your own lane and stop being in John's business. So, yeah, my kids are great. Oh, what a life.
Well, the fact is, you're in Jonathan's life, so that's what is.
Yep. Yeah. You know, you go to these movies that trigger you. I'm triggered a lot at the refugee center because the situation's there. There's a young woman who came in today with the clothes on her back and a 13-month-old baby, having fled. She's a Muslim woman who fled an abusive husband. She's one of 3 wives. And he threw her out. And she's on the street. And they brought her in, and we're just setting up this huge yard sale for the benefit of the church. But the refugees get to take anything they want without paying. And they get first dibs. So a lot of good stuff disappears even before we start. She comes down there, and we're only 2 days into collecting donations. What do I have? A tiny little evening gown somebody donated. A Chinese kimono somebody donated. Little high-heeled shoes. And she's a woman, she's not small. She may be size 14 or something. She says, do you have any clothes? And I said, not yet. No baby clothes, nothing. And she's sitting down there telling me how Islam is a wonderful religion, but it is misused because these are human beings. They don't do it right. They don't honor their wives. They mistreat them. They throw them out if they feel like it. She's from Afghanistan, and her English isn't so bad.
It's an old dynamic.
Yeah.
The quote-unquote Christian prohibition against divorce was actually a prohibition against exactly that, which was putting a wife out. It was a tradition because women were property and had no way to earn a living. So if you threw her out of the house while you were tired of her and played with somebody else, and then when you got tired of the somebody else, brought her back in, that was kind of the game. And that's what he wasn't. Yeshua was not talking about divorce. He was talking about putting a woman out. And so that's sadly a trick that's still going on in the culture.
Right. And so my first thought was, wow, we have this basement. It's filthy. And I thought, we have this basement. She could come here for a while. But Jonathan had just said, no more homeless people in the basement. If you want to help somebody, you call me first, he says. So I didn't offer us for our basement. I tell you, Michael.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear, if he'd have come home, right? Oh, what an opportunity to learn forgiveness. Oh, go ahead, get her in there before he gets home. No, just kidding.
I wasn't even tempted. Kidding. I just thought, oh my God, I could do this and I'm not doing it. It's hard to say no. She wasn't asking either. But I couldn't even give her anything.
Remember when Yeshua said, you'll always have the poor with you? And what he was saying was, concentrate on me and what I'm teaching you, and you can't save them all.
Yeah,
it's not your job.
The trick is you put yourself in their shoes. Suddenly I'm needing to do a wake-up sheet because I'm having an anxiety attack. That's an exaggeration, but I'm feeling just terrible for her, wondering what it's like for her. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, horrendous.
It is horrendous. And we're having to revamp the whole refugee center because it is bursting at the seams. I'm the snack person. I go a huge Costco shop at the beginning of each week, bring the food in on the day before and stick it in there, and it's gone at the end of the week, and they're running out of food, and they have to think, can we still do this? I think giving a little snack and some coffee or tea in the middle of the time they're learning is a wonderful thing to be able to do. And we let them in without a wait list. They walk in. They find out and they walk in. And it's now being run every day, willy-nilly. There are volunteers there every day just receiving people and talking to them about what they need. It's overwhelming. I'm only doing Tuesdays. I only do one day a week. And
well, what I hear is that perhaps you're actually doing 7 days a week in your mind.
Right.
It's just that you're there 1 day a week. So I'd support you recognizing there's some forgiveness work to be done around that and the identification with that level of pain. And as you clear out any other layers or levels of pain within yourself related to that, then you'll be an even more powerful space of love and support for their healing.
I can feel the truth of that. I wouldn't know how. I have to get out a wake-up sheet and start somewhere, but I wouldn't know how to even frame, because I'm not mad at anybody or hurt by anybody. You don't have to do it on the radio show. I think I could get going if I just sat quietly.
Yeah, you could probably take a look at your regulatory speech there about being mad and hurt around it, hurting people, and that would probably be a good starting point.
Mad? Did I say mad? Maybe I did.
Well, you said you were not
feel
mad.
Oh, I'm not. Wait a minute. Go back because I don't remember what I said. Do you remember what I said?
I do. You said you
Okay.
weren't mad. So I would say your first worksheets would be around anger. And
Okay.
then you said you weren't, I think your words were, you didn't want to hurt anybody. And so your next worksheets, listening to your regulatory speech, might be to start looking at the part of you that wants to hurt people who are in need.
I don't even
Or not
want to
fulfilling,
think that's
or not
true.
fulfilling your goals. Well, that's of course what the worksheet's for, to uncover those parts. That's why they call it the unconscious.
Oh man, my first thought about them is that they have such bravery, such guts, but they must be desperate to leave a country and familiar language and family. It must be terrible for them to go to that much trouble and risk and uncertainty.
I hear you on that one. No idea. We are so blessed and we live in such ease and comfort.
Yeah.
We have no idea. It's true. Are you breathing?
I just started. It occurred to me that I ought to do that. Yeah. Well, thanks for feeling all that.
Who knows, perhaps there's some kind of genetic link to being a refugee, being homeless, being traumatized like that. Who knows what needs to move? But if you think about it, if you let it cross your mind and you're holding your breath, there's the place to do the work, to look at what it is that the breath is holding back that wants to come up and be healed.
Yeah. As far as my own, ancestry, it's German, Dutch, English, and French pretty much. And our people came over very, very early, formative, to the colonies. And then my dad's family were German, but they came over. His parents could tell that there was terrible trouble brewing in Germany, and they got out. And they are not Jewish either. They just didn't like the way things were going. I'd love to be able to.
Yeah.
But so they didn't go. They came over able to take care of themselves and be okay. They didn't go through that, as far as I know. But who knows? You don't know.
Well,
how about your people?
And they may have been in a space where, having the eyes to see and the ears to hear, they knew it was coming, and so got out. But why did they have the eyes to see and the ears to hear? What was in their lineage?
Yeah.
That maybe went, well, we've been here before. We're getting out of Dodge.
Yeah.
I'll leave the possibility for that, for whatever, as you breathe and key into those goals and start canceling them, to allow whatever needs to surface in that regard that can be cleared out. And also, notice and acknowledge yourself for, well, there are opportunities to heal here. There is also deep compassion and caring. And that's pretty awesome. What's happening with your breath?
I feel very sad. I can just feel my heart.
So I'd put my hands on the heart if I were you right now?
I just did, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Oh, good. And just really embrace your own heart and love right now. Literally we've done the love exchange before. Do a love exchange with your own heart, literally embracing it. And, we as a culture, we're so far away from truth that when someone's heart falls apart, we talk about how it's attacked them.
Oh, wow.
As opposed to owning that, I've attacked myself in my heart so often that my heart finally couldn't take anymore.
Wow, that's a thought.
So if there's any of that sort of thing, that you allow yourself to embrace that energy and let it be processed from your heart, literally on a tissue level, letting loose of that so that your heart can upgrade to the next level of well-being and health and wholeness and strength. And joining you in holding the space for all of the hurting hearts on the planet, which is beyond comprehension. Yeah.
I've told you about how the little nursery school has become a healing center for the babies who have a lot of trauma. They act out in ways that are really impressive. Destruction, non-cooperation, breaking things, throwing things, tantrums. And the women in there who work with them, it's almost one-to-one ratio of volunteers to kids.
Right.
And how beautifully they do with those kids.
What a gift to the community and to the world.
It really is. We're almost so big that we don't know how we're going to handle ourselves. But we're working on it, and a lot of people flock in to help. There are a lot of beautiful people around who just come in from miles around to help. So
that's awesome.
There's a lot of good stuff going on in the world. It's just not in the news so much.
Yeah, I think that, if we were to put a number per person in the world of suffering, while there's still a tremendous amount of suffering in the world, that probably in the last 150 years, that number per person has probably been cut by at least 75%.
Wow.
When you look at the progress that's been made in terms of starvation, water, disease, and suffering overall. So, we've made enormous progress, and there's still a whole lot to do, but as each person steps on board, as the Course says, when you're healed, you're never healed alone. It definitely opens the space. And when you look at the amount of humanitarian effort that has come forward out of the pockets of the wealthy and the poor, and just people who care, we've moved mountains, and while there's still mountains to move, each step forward, I think, leads to the next possible step forward.
Keep that thought.
So joining you in that, yes.
Yeah.
Joining you in that. And the show's just informed us that our time is pretty much complete.
Okay.
So I'm going to just say thank you for this conversation. Thank you for everything that you do in the world, and for your willingness to heal, holding the space for Jonathan, and for Michael, and for Jacob, for each of the family involved, your daughter,